Yes, that's right. It's Joe here live for Joyrider TV, back with some more Q&A, where I am going to be tackling your most pressing catamaran sailing questions. Oh, yes, I am. That is the intention. And as usual, I'm going to be starting off with a challenging question to get the ball rolling. This one comes from Leo. Pretty challenging questions straight in. So Leo's first question, we're talking about sailing upwind when it's windy. He says, when sailing upwind and easing some traveler, doesn't it start to close the slot somewhat, so the sails are less efficient? So I've actually done an accurate representation of the slot being closed here. So the slot is what we call the gap between the jib and the mainsail and the back of the mainsail. And what we're looking for with the slot is so that the jib doesn't, this isn't a particularly realistic jib, let's be honest. So the jib, which would have a bit of curve in it, doesn't direct the wind directly onto the back of the sail. So what we don't want to happen is the wind coming off the jib and going directly onto the back, or that slot being really tight and the wind just can't actually pass through without distorting the back of the mainsail. So what Leo is asking is, when we let the mainsail traveler out because it's windy going upwind, how do we avoid this slot becoming, let's say, over congested, where we're trying to force too much wind through that small gap, which would backwind the mainsail? Okay, so the answer to this one is actually pretty straightforward. So if we are easing out the mainsail traveler for wind strength, which on a a boat like a Hobie, a 16, then we would do this a lot earlier than we would do on other types of boat, like the boats with the higher aspect sails, like the Tornado, because on the boats with the higher aspect sails, we've got more sophisticated means of dealing with the excess power. Like we've got a pre-bent mast, which helps us to flatten the sail. We've got a powerful downhaul, which helps us to flatten the sail, and that is what we've got. But it's so efficient. Whereas on a Hobie 16 especially, we can't get rid of all of that curve in the mainsail. So yes, we have to use other means to get rid of the power, or to make the boat more efficient when it's windy, to transfer that power from power that is trying to make the boat fly the hull to power that is trying to make the boat go faster. So by letting the traveler out, it means that if we imagine this to have a bit of curve in it, it is going from pulling that way to pulling that way more, which means it is going to be driving the boat forwards more rather than just trying to make us lift the hull. There we go. So that is why we've got that difference there. So in answer to Leo's question number one, if we travel out the mainsail traveler, we will move the jib traveler out the same percentage or more. So when we're saying the same percentage, the main traveler, the range that we've got is from here to here, let's say, and the jib traveler, the range that we've got is from here to here. So it's a much smaller track, but we're going to let it out the same percentage. So if we've let this out halfway, we'll let this one out halfway, or probably a bit more than halfway. That is what we do. All right, just like to say hello to Hussein, who was just here last week, who has kicked off the action in this evening's super sticker. What's the thing called that I set up here? I think it's called a goal. There we go. I set up a goal, and the super stickers are an initiative to keep the Q&A ad free. Yes. If you want to keep the Q&A ad free, then you can help by shooting in a super sticker, even if it's just for 20 units of like the small units, like cents or pence. Then it all helps to keep the Q&A ad free. Thanks very much, Hussein. Hussein was, of course, here last week. Well, I say, of course. And we were doing some in-person coaching, which I think was absolutely brilliant, and we achieved a lot, including some champagne, a lot of champagne sailing. All right, so Leo's second question, and this is a really interesting one, actually. We're still talking about the slot, and Leo says, when we pull the downhaul on, or the Cunningham on, this is moving the center of effort forwards in the sail. So if we've got our downhaul pulled on the smallest amount, you know, when we're just getting rid of the creases in the sail, we're pulling it on, it's putting that even curve into the whole sail. Then when we pull it on beyond that, we're getting the center of effort, the deepest part of the sail is moving forwards. So this is like, let's call this minimum, and this is more. Okay, so minimum, the center of effort is kind of here, and then as we put on more, the center of effort moves forwards. This is the mast here. So he says, doesn't that act to close the slot, which would disturb our perfect airflow? Well, I'm going to say no, because what we're doing is we're not putting more curve into the front of the sail. What we're doing is we're taking curve out of the back part of the sail. So the actual slot is not going to be changed at all. It's the back part of the mainsail, which is going to become flatter. So we're not actually putting more curve into the front of the sail when we pull on the Cunningham. We're just flattening the back part of the sail, which means by doing that, the center of effort is moving forwards, because that flat part, the back of the sail, no longer is creating that amount of drive. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then Leo's third question, and this one is a bit trickier. I think it's just the wording. He says, making the sail flatter with the Cunningham needs a smaller angle of attack. So we ease some traveler, correct? Question mark. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by a smaller angle of attack here. So if we start off with this curved sail in the middle, and then we flatten it off using the downhaul, there's no need to move. Just in answer to the do we need to adjust the traveler question, no, we don't need to adjust the traveler, because we're doing it all with the downhaul. So this would be more on the high aspect type rigged catamarans like the Tornado or the Formula 18, where we're cranking on the downhaul, and we can adjust the mast rotation as well to help us to flatten off the whole rig. So no need to ease the traveler for the angle of attack there. yeah, so there you go, Leo. Hopefully those answers are useful, and everyone else. And hello to everybody who's tuning in live. Great to have you with us. Once again, the Q&A is ad-free, and keeping it ad-free are your super stickers that you're shooting in. So thanks very much in advance for helping to keep the Q&A ad-free. Because for me, I watch a bit of YouTube, and if I'm doing the washing up and I've got soapy hands, I don't like having to reach for the skip ads button. Oh no, ad free. You could subscribe, of course, not subscribe, but anyway. Okay, so into the live chat. We've got Mark and Janet in Ohio taking the win in the live chat. Great to have you on board there. I hope it's all going well. I hope the things are warming up. Pete is with us from Prestwick Beach in Scotland. He's got a question. If you go without a jib on a Hobie 16, do you use the same mast rake that you would normally with the jib? That's a good question. And I would say no. Ideally, let's have our boat. Let's have a mast. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to have the center of effort, and that isn't the center of effort of the mainsail, but the center of effort of the whole thing. And maybe rather than center of effort, we could call it the central power source, to be coming from pretty much, you know, a similar place. So when we've got the main and the jib, which I will do in orange, if we think where our central power source is, that would be kind of like here, maybe a little bit lower. Whereas if we got rid of the jib and kept the mast rake the same, then our central power source would then move here. So, and what we're doing is we're lining that up with the center of lateral resistance on the hulls. So it's kind of wanting to be like here. So if we're sailing without the jib, we don't want it quite as far back. So I would say ideally take the shroud's upper hole if you are going to be sailing without a jib, because then once the jib's gone, bringing the mast upright a bit more is going to keep that power source in a similar kind of alignment with our center of lateral resistance on the hulls. And of course, if we are sailing without a jib, we also need to make sure that we've got some rig tension cranked on. So what I would do is onto the end of the jib halyard. So we've got a jib halyard block there, a jib halyard block there. Now, the jib halyard blocks, unless you've got a very long jib halyard, aren't long enough to shackle directly onto the chain plate at the front. That's the chain plate at the front, by the way. Not my best work. I'll accept that. So you might have to use an extra piece of rope to attach the jib halyard blocks onto that chain plate at the front. And then if you're going without a jib, what you could try to do, and in fact, that's what I've done when I've been sailing just the mainsail on a Hobie 16, is for the wind, I've cranked on a lot more rig tension than I would do normally, which is pulling the mast forwards, of course, which is going to help to keep that power source a bit better lined up. So yeah, perhaps the honest answer is what I would do is when you go out, crank on more rig tension than you would do normally for that wind, making sure that the mast can still rotate. That's when you know you've put on too much rig tension, if the mast is unable to rotate. And then with the rig tension on, take the boat for a sail, see how it feels, and there's a good chance it's going to feel nice. So if that's the case, no need to adjust the shrouds. If, however, you are feeling that she's a little bit heavy in the rudders or heavier than normal in the rudders, this is, of course, assuming you've got your rudders set up nicely, then that means we're putting too much load over the back of the boat, which means we want to get the mast a little bit further forwards. Hope that helps, Pete. Good question. All right. We've got Ryan on board, who I believe might be getting somewhere a bit closer to being out here. Great to have you on board there, Ryan. This time from Tahoe. I don't really know where that is, but haven't sailed since tearing the hull. Yes, looking forward to fine champagne conditions and a quiver of new toys to play with for a week. Oh yes, and oh yes. Yeah, it's all going to be on when Ryan arrives on Vasiliki Beach. And that would be the same for everybody else, of course, but Ryan happens to be coming. All right, we've got Max on board from Rosenheim, Germany. No wind since 2 weeks. We could help. There's probably a flight going tomorrow to come out. Oh, yes. Not trying to flood Vasiliki with Joyrider TV. Global community members, but the more the merrier, really. All right, Hussein says Wildwind is a beautiful place, but sailing one-to-one with Joe is an entirely different experience. That's me. It will take your sailing ability to another level. We're planning to make a habit of going there. Great choice, Hussein. Thanks very much for your kind words. All right, we've got the Earl of Porridge on board in Berlin, Germany, and he'll be seeing us. I'm assuming it's a he. Because Earl, otherwise it'd be the Countess, I believe. We'll see you in Vass for the Ionian Regatta. Oh, great stuff. Yeah, one of the big events on the Wildwind and Southern Lefkas, or even the Ionian Islands calendar, is the Ionian Regatta, which is a long distance race that takes place traditionally the third week in September, but it has been going between that and the second week in September in previous years. So I'm not sure which week it is this year, but I think the Earl of Porridge knows. All right. Thanks very much to Ryan for the super sticker. Hashtag ad free. Yes. Don't want the soapy finger on the skip ads button. Oh, no. All right. D. Nixter is on board in Idaho. Awesome cat sailing on the Palisades in this past week. Great stuff. Yeah, very nice. That I think a lot of the Northern Hemisphere has definitely thawed out by now. And it's a great time to get on the speed stick. Even if when you've gone sailing, you felt that she had more to give. Why not log your speed on the speed stick? And then it's kind of like a statement of intent that, yes, I've put down let's say a 13.3. I know I can go faster, but I've put that down there now, and I don't want to leave that there for the season. I want to put a bigger speed on. So it's kind of like by putting it there, you've told yourself we are going after this thing, and that's what you're doing. And that's why, every time I go out sailing and I start the water speed app on my watch, if it's if the water speed app tells me I got a speed that either I haven't been out on that type of boat, or it's the fastest speed on that type of boat, then it's going on the stick. So I think it's a good way of having a bit more focus when you go out sailing. You may be wondering, why do I promote the speed stick so much? It really is just for the fact that I think it's so important to have a bit of a focus when you go out sailing, especially like if you're able to get out a lot or regularly, then having a focus is really going to help to boost your level. And the focus of sailing a bit faster, that's pretty good focus, because at the end of the day, what is catamaran sailing about? Number one, looking cool. How do you look cool? By going faster and wearing matching gear, of course, which you can get at totaljoyrider.com. Yeah, and if you are doing any events this season, then I can provide you with your team uniform with matching gear like these ones that I made for the Tornado Worlds last year. And we are revving up for this year's Tornado Worlds in Thessaloniki, Greece, where hopefully I will have a mast. Yeah, fingers crossed. All right. So SA is with us, says, I am joining a 2-day laser dinghy course tomorrow. Very nice. Great idea to get some dinghy sailing done, even if your motivation for your sailing career is catamaran sailing, because dinghy sailing or monohull sailing, where you've only got one hull, you're going to learn a lot of important stuff by doing that, which will then make it much easier when it comes to sailing a catamaran. It's true. Already aiming to buy a beach cat. Very good plan. If I enjoy sailing as much as I expect, question, how should I filter the laser experience in preparation for the catamaran? Wow, that is that's a reasonably tough question. What would you take away? I think the basics are a good place to start. So kind of like points of sail and sail setting. So because it is all of the same in theory. I don't know what your current experience is, SA, but so the traditional points of sail would be like this. So you have actually got 4 main points of sail. So that's with the wind coming here. And then, wow, we're really going for it now. We are doing the whole clock. And in fact, we could make this into a bit of a, I believe it's called a velocity kidney. So these are the directions that we can sail in. And this is exactly the same on all types of sailing boat. So we've got this area here. Called the no-go zone. So this is the area where we can't sail. So this is the sort of stuff that you can apply from any type of sailing to another. So knowing your points of sail. So if we wanted to sail from down here to up here, because we can't sail directly to that target, but we can sail on these angles. So the closest we can sail to the wind is 45 degrees. So if we were going up here, we'd sail in a series of zigzags to get up to that what we'd call upwind destination or goal. And that one, I think getting your head round that in the laser is going to be really useful when it comes to getting on the catamaran. And then just, I think what you'll find a lot more with the laser as well is your main power control, which on most boats is the main sheet. When you adjust the main sheet on a monohull, you'll find a very, very quick and positive effect. So when you let the main sheet out on a laser, your power will disappear really quickly. When you pull it in, the power will come back. And much more noticeable, especially in lighter winds, than you'd notice on a catamaran. So knowing that from having sailed a laser, when you jump on a catamaran, you'll know how effective the power control is, even if you don't feel it as much when you're sailing a catamaran. So very good to keep that in mind. Now, one difference that we must pay attention to is on most catamarans, we don't sail straight downwind like here, because the catamaran just loses so much speed going that far downwind. So we've actually got an opposite zone down here, which we could call the slow go zone. No go zone, slow go zone. Yes. So like when we were sailing upwind in the catamaran, we'd zigzag up to that buoy or that point. When we're going downwind, we'd zigzag down as well, just because we would actually get there quicker than sailing in a straight line. But yeah, just really embrace all of it on the laser. Do some capsize drills as well, just so that you kind of start getting that that feeling of being kind of comfortable in the water with a capsized boat. Because the more comfortable you are in the water, it means you're going to be kind of less resistant to the capsize. Not saying that we should be aiming to capsize, but we shouldn't be in fear of the capsize. It is going to happen from time to time. And if when we capsize, we are immediately comfortable in the water, we'll be so much better equipped sort of mentally to deal with it. There you go. That's pretty deep. All right. Yeah, but have a great time on the laser. Laser's a great boat. I would certainly suggest to anybody who gets the opportunity to do some laser sailing at some point. All right. Ryan says, I didn't see any cat action on Lake Tahoe. Or is it Tahoe, which is California and Nevada, but did see a really nice sloop. Good to know. Thanks, Ryan. All right. And SA says, thanks. The power response and downwind difference were good stuff. I bet the Baltic Sea will be cold tomorrow. Oh, yes. That is something that you can definitely take away from laser to catamaran, is on a laser, you're going to be much closer to the water. Whereas when you're on a catamaran, you'll feel like you've got at least twice the distance from where you are to the water, which will feel really nice when you get there. All right. Thanks very much, SA. Good luck. Dry suit on if you've got one. All right. We've got Chris in the preloaded questions. Oh, we've got some more. Yeah, this is quite a tricky one as well. Went sailing on Wednesday using a GPS tracker and then using the Wind Guru app to get accurate fixes on the angles. I hope this makes sense to everyone. My Hobie 16 will achieve about 60 degrees when trying to sail upwind. So if we get rid of these guys here. So yeah, I was saying 45 degrees, whereas 60 degrees would be more like this, which to be honest, that isn't very close to the wind. And if we were trying to get to an upwind goal or destination, it's going to be quite frustrating because we're not going to feel so much like we're getting there. So Chris says, what are the options for upwind? I'm going to try reducing the mast rake by going up a hole on the shrouds and maybe sail with less tension on the main sheet. Currently, I have the blocks block to block. Any other tips? Yeah, so first thing that comes to mind with what you've said there, Chris, is I've lost my boat. Oh, here he is. Is if it is quite easy to get it block to block, if it's quite easy, because we want to have the main sheet in fairly tight. Well, yeah, pretty tight, really. We want to have it in tight, but if when we get the main sheet in, so the blocks are touching like that, which we would call block to block, and it didn't seem to take too much effort to get it block to block, what that is suggesting is that there's not enough distance between the boom and the back beam. This distance is too small, which means it's too easy to sheet in, and the byproduct of that being too easy is going to mean we're not getting any tension in the leech of the sail. So can I draw this? Not really. But if we were to look from the top, I'm going to draw it. It's a dangerous game. If that's the mast, if we go look at from the top, there's the sail, and then it's just kind of no tension in the back edge, and it's the tension in the leech of the sail, the back edge, that helps us to sail closer to the wind. So I'd say don't worry so much about reducing the tension in the main sheet, but it might be that your mast is too far back. So yes, try putting the shrouds up by one hole, get the rig tension on fairly tight. Start off with the rig tension tight, shrouds up one hole, take it for a sail. If you can, find something on the water to sail to, like if there's a buoy or a buoy, find something that you can sail to, and you should be able to get a reasonably decent idea of your angles while you're sailing. Do you think that when you tack, you end up at about 90 degrees to the course that you started on? If the answer is yes, then you are in a generally good spot there. That is what we're aiming for, 90 degrees tacking angle. Yeah, if you can't get enough tension in the leech of the sail, that is really going to hinder you from being able to point close to the wind. What else could we mention here? And you can, if it's getting windier, you can experiment a little bit with where you're standing on the boat, because there's a great temptation with your kind of trapezing position to be trapezing really far forwards, because as it gets talked about a lot, being as far forwards as we can on the boat is really efficient, reduces drag. But on a 16, where all that we have in the water is a bit of hull and a rudder, if we go too far forwards, so that the boat is kind of pointing down a bit at the front rather than being flat. So if this is the water, we're not going to have much rudder in the water, which means we're not really getting much to stop the boat from slipping sideways, and not very much to give us lift to help us to sail higher up to the wind. So yeah, just to summarize there, shrouds upper hole, start off with loads of rig tension as long as the mast can still rotate. Sail with the boat flat, so you could think of it as your sidebar horizontal, or what would you call it, level, let's say level with the horizon. That's what we want, boat flat. And if it's getting windy and you feel when you get a gust of wind, that gust isn't really helping you to go any faster. It seems that the gust of wind is just trying to lift the hull, and the rudders feel horrible every time the hull lifts and the boat just wants to round up into the wind. Then just release a little bit of rig tension, like that much rope, and that will have a large effect on your speed. The faster that you can sail, now this is going to confuse people, I'm not going to say it. I was going to say the faster you sail, the closer you'll be able to point to the wind. But I don't want to encourage everyone to start sailing on a close reach thinking I'm going to get close to the wind by going on a close reach. No, we're not doing that. Okay. All right. So I hope that helps, Chris. Good luck with pointing higher. All right. So where are we going next? I think there's some, by the way, I think there's some really good information coming already in this Q&A. I know most of the best, I think most of the best information is in the first hour of the Q&A. And then after that, it seems like the guy doing the talking is just rushing it because he's getting thirsty. Maybe there's an element of truth in that. So, all right, just clearing the board, although it'll probably turn out that I need one of these anyway. So got Charles in the preloaded question department. All right. Oh, I like this one. Okay. Charles has just bought a 1976 Hobie 14 to sail on White Bear Lake in Minnesota. Very nice. If you sail also on White Bear Lake in Minnesota, put it in the comments. We'd like to know. Chris is in the process of updating some worn out parts. His question is regarding the replacement of the trampoline. What is the preference between mesh or vinyl? Okay, so the obvious benefit of mesh, and to be honest, I've only used mesh probably 99.9% of my catamaran sailing career. It's all been mesh. So my vinyl experience is pretty limited, but big difference. Mesh allows the water to pass through. Vinyl doesn't allow the water to pass through. I would say mesh possibly has a better life expectancy, especially if you're leaving the boat without a cover on it. If you can put a cover on the boat, not that this is the point, but having a cover on the boat is going to make your trampoline and any ropes underneath there last, I'd say probably 20 times longer. Because if you think about it, the actual time when you're using the boat is tiny compared to the time when your boat is sat on the beach or in a boat park or exposed to the elements. So if you have a boat cover, you are going to save the life of your trampoline. And I would say with a boat cover on, your trampoline should last as long as the rest of the boat, as long as you wash it regularly. and you don't go sailing wearing high-heeled shoes or carrying a Stanley knife. Yeah, so I would go mesh trampoline every time. If you're a vinyl trampoline fan, put it in the live chat, put it in the comments, and say why it is that you like the vinyl trampoline. Does the vinyl trampoline give you less abrasion to your knees? That's a good question. But honestly, I don't actually know, having not really used, I say not really, not actually used a vinyl trampoline. Is it nice when it's windy not to have the water coming straight through the trampoline? Interesting. I think I'd prefer it just to come through and then drain away, personally. Also, if you capsize with the mesh trampoline, the wind will pass through a certain amount the trampoline, whereas a vinyl trampoline, you've got a hard wall of impenetrable trampoline there, so much more windage on the trampoline when you are capsized with vinyl. So I think you can feel the way that I'm going here is it's all about the mesh. Yeah, for me. So like I said, put it in the comments, put it in the live chat if you are a vinyl trampoline fan. Thank you. All right, so part 2 of Charles's question. He says, sounds like a ridiculous question. Not at all. The only ridiculous questions are the ones that you don't ask. Any preference on color? For example, black heats up more quickly. No, I think the only thing with color is if you're not going to be putting a cover on the trampoline, then just kind of think about what that color's going to look like when it's faded a bit. So like I would avoid red personally, because red will become pink, and it won't become a nice pink. It'll become a fairly flaccid pink that that you don't actually see on a color chart. Or yeah, so you will have seen on my 16 Bad Boy 95, looks like that. I've got an orange trampoline from Salt City Sailing, and I would say it is absolutely brilliant. And definitely, if you're not interested in racing at all, I would say Salt City Sailing are supplying the best value trampolines out there. And I got a cover from Salt City Sailing as well, which is so fast to put on. I reckon in fact, I'm going to do a video, how long does it take to put the cover on the boat? I reckon I could do it in about 30 seconds. That's quick. Yeah, so there you go. I would say choose the color that looks good on the boat, that brings you joy. Traditional, of course, is black or grey, but other colors are available. Thanks very much for your question, Charles. Just going to jump back into the live chat where Hussein says, when sailing solo in high wind, where to move on the other side when tacking, sailing solo? Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, if it's a strong wind, and in fact, you're not going to believe this, but just yesterday, well, I've been coaching this week. I've been coaching Craig from Maryland, USA. And while I was out coaching with Craig, I saw quite a few people stalled on the Hobie 14. So I thought I'll make a video to highlight how to not stall and how to tack. But when I started filming the video, the wind picked up significantly, over 30 knots. So I feel quite well equipped to answer a question about where to sit when tacking. So if or where to position yourself. So when you're going into the tack, business as usual, you would be around here, you'd go into the tack. But the difference is, I would say, if it's high winds and you're on your own, as soon as the jib backs, we'll draw this bit in as well. As soon as the jib has backed, there is going to be quite a tendency for the boat to start rearing up like that, which if you didn't adjust where your weight is, you could end up capsizing backwards. And on the 14, that was a serious consideration. So what we need to do is, once we're happy that the boat has passed through the wind, and perhaps we've put the boat into reverse if we're going straight into a 3-point turn style tack, then we want to be jumping into this top corner and abandoning the rudders. They know what to do. When it's that windy, get into this corner, keep the front of the boat down, and just watch the front of the boat come through the wind. And then from there, you can pull the jib across to the new side. Once you've done that, go to the back, grab the stick, and then off you go. But before you go to the back and grab the stick, the boat wants to be with the wind at about 45 degrees, because if it's still like it is here and you go to the back, then the wind is going to get under the trampoline, whether it's vinyl or mesh, and there's a strong chance you could capsize backwards. So you're going from here, putting the boat through the wind, and pretty much as soon as you've gone under the boom, you're going to be moving up into that corner. But the actual boat is going to tell you where you need to be, because if you feel when you've gone under the boom, if you think the front of the boat is going quite high up, then it should be quite obvious that you need to get as far forwards as you can to get the front of the boat back down. There we go. All right, Scott is dropping it in the slot. Morning, Scott. Hope you're doing well. Oh, and Ryan has come through with a second super sticker. Ryan is flying the flag in the super sticker department. Thanks very much, Ryan. Teal is the deal. Ad-free challenge. There we go. Everybody is welcome to get in with the ad-free super sticker initiative. Thanks very much. So Scott says he uses vinyl on his cold water mountain lake to avoid getting splashed through the trampoline. Yeah, I can see how that would be much more comfortable rather than getting wet through the trampoline. Alex says, I prefer mesh. On that vinyl trampoline, there's always a puddle. Could be. Yeah. If your trampoline is tight enough, you would think that there wouldn't be a puddle, but there's going to be more chance of a puddle on a vinyl trampoline. Okay. So we've got Ken on board who says Slow Sail and Canvas offers a free sample pack of all their trampoline materials. Yeah, I know I've been back in the Salt City sailing horse of trampoline and cover construction, but that's because I've got first-hand experience with them. I've heard a lot of good things about Slow Sail and Canvas as well, so do check out them as well, and anyone else you can find. But in my experience, the Salt City sailing trampoline is everything you could possibly need. But just have to point this out: if you want to do any competitions, class competitions like a US Nationals perhaps you're in Europe, or Europeans, anything like that, it has to be original Hobie stuff. There we go. Scott says, I've not experienced puddling. Tight trampoline and slight angle, and the water runs straight off. Yes, very good with the vinyl. All right, Ken says, search for trampolines for your boat, and they then list low to high. Should be at the top of the list then. There we go. And we got Flight Fest 900 on board. Thanks for tuning in. Flight Fest, I think first time in the I think first time in the live chat, so welcome. Just got a 1981 Hobie 16. Should I buy adjustable rudder casings? What are the benefits over the original ones? Okay, that's a good question. So I'm feeling what you're just to clarify what it is that you're asking is in your original upper castings for your boat, there'd be kind of like this kind of shape, and then the tiller arm goes in there, and then the lower casting would locate like this. I believe that's what you're asking. And on the older upper castings for the rudders, you've got a fixed bar that runs through kind of somewhere like there, and it's that bar that locates onto the rudder cam and holds the rudder down in position. Okay, so if when you put your rudders down, what I would do is put the where are we? Put the boat on, if you've got a trolley, put it on a launching trolley on the land with the bows of the boat on the floor, lock the rudders down like this. And then what we want to see, this is what's going to tell you if it's worth replacing this or not. What you want to see is when you pull the rudder backwards, like so, as it is here, like this, is there a gap? How do we get the light in there and be able to see it? Kind of like that. All right. Is there a gap between the front of the rudder cast, the lower casting, and the rudder blade? So does the rudder, so that would be like that, rudder blade in there. When you pull the rudder blade backwards, does it come back like that, the rudder blade? If a gap does appear in here, then we need to somehow get it to lock further down. With these older upper castings that just have a fixed bar going through, this could be a small issue. But having been to Nacra, and something that I kind of learned at Nacra with what we could do about that is this bar, we could somehow, not quite sure how, but somehow, like if the bar that runs through is this size and it's not locking it down enough, then what we could do is put something around that bar to make it a bit thicker, so that might have enough of an effect to hold the rudder more under the boat, which is where we want it. We want that rudder blade tucked into the back of the boat as close as it can possibly go. into the back of the into the casting, like I just demonstrated. So perhaps making that bar that runs through is going to be beneficial. But yeah, and if we could get it so it locks down like that, then it's a done deal. No need to replace the upper casting. But if it seems like there's no way to get it to lock down, one thing we need to check is, especially if your boat has been through quite a few owners, perhaps the rudder blades have been snapped, maybe they've been snapped in the past and replaced with some other rudder blades. If, let's say, if one of your rudder blades locks down nicely, but the other one is coming backwards like that, it might be because it's not a matching pair of rudder blades, and the actual holes, where can I do this? If this is our rudder blade, then we'd have one hole in the back like that, one hole in the middle. So that would go onto there. If the holes in the rudder blade aren't in the right place, then it's never going to lock down the correct amount. So these rudder blades might have come off like a Hobie 18, for example, because the Hobie 18 has got a different style of rudder stock, which means the bolts go, the holes in the blade are in a different spot. And if you've got Lexan rudder blades, what they've got is, well, at least in Europe, around here, they've got this thing like this, where it says 18, 15, 17. And if you've got a rudder blade that says that on it, on your 16, it's not going to lock down correctly. So that might be the issue. But if you've got the right rudder blades and you're not getting them locked down enough, then that would be the point to upgrade your castings. And the difference with the more modern castings is what we have is we have a bolt that goes into, if we looked at the casting from the top, there's a slot in the top of the casting where the bolt goes, and the bolt can go forwards and backwards, and that bolt locates into what's called a cam stop plate, which is adjustable, so that we can adjust that to hold the rudders as far down as possible. There we go. Great information today. Crikey. Okay, hope that helps. Okay, Ken says, Hobie 16 with vinyl trampoline, laced tight, nice for blocking cold water spray here in Wisconsin. Never capsized on a cat with a mesh tramp, but mine wind vanes quickly after capsizing. There we go. Yeah, so I think it's 50-50 for me because of my experience, mesh, but I think it does sound like if you sail where the water is cold, then it does sound like a vinyl trampoline does have the benefits of not allowing the spray to get through. All right, so Flight Fest 900 continuation to the rudder question. One more question for the rudder cams. They're inverted to, I suppose, not invert, to reset them. Do I just put the flathead screwdriver in the little hole that doesn't have a screw and twist? Yeah, I think, have I got a, pretty sure I've got a rudder cam here. Yes, I have. All right. So here we go. So before you go sailing, before you put your rudders down, here we go. So you can see it at least. That's a good idea, isn't it? Well done. Your rudder stock should look like that with the cam in that position. When your rudders are locked down, the cam will flip down into, can you see with the light? Oh, black background, not so good. All right, in that position. So, and then the cam stop plate or that bar would locate in here, and that's what holds the rudders down. Now, what can happen sometimes is if you lift the rudders by pulling up the bar, if you lift it straight up, the rudder cam can stay in this position, which means the next time you're not going to be able to lock the rudder down. So first one is when you're lifting the rudders, don't just lift the bar straight up. If you are on the boat, lift it up and pull it towards you. So you're going like that way, or a bit that way as well, because by pulling it that way, the bar or the cam stop plate is going to, there's the cam, is going to flip the cam back upright. So by pulling the tiller arm towards the boat. Now, if it has got stuck in this position, and I recommend every time you go out sailing, before you go sailing, check your rudder cams, and then have I got a screwdriver in here? No, I don't believe I have. Oh, I've got a Phillips screwdriver. I would use a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to put the screwdriver to get this back into its position in the gap in the side, just there, and we're going to lever it. It's kind of a twist and lever to get this to come back upright like that. There we go. So that is the method to put the rudder cam back upright like that. Okay, I'd just like to say thanks very much to Joseph Jones for the GBP super sticker. Thanks very much, Joseph, helping to keep the Q&A ad-free. This is the new game that we're playing. If you want to keep the ads off the Q&A, then chuck in a super sticker and you will be doing your bit to help keep it ad-free. Joseph says, I have a reasonable condition Hobie Pacific from 2001. Very good. Great original sales. Does this have any value? I would say yes. Now, 2001 was actually the year when the Hobie Pacific first came out. So this would be very much a first generation Pacific. And I believe they were built between 2001 and 2011. So only built for 10 years, which means there's a limited amount of Hobie Pacifics out there. And what we find at Wildwind Sailing Holidays is people love the Pacific because it is stable, it's fast, it's got lots of space, loads of volume in the hulls, it's got everything going for it. So does it have any value? I would say of that age, if it is in, let's say if it was that age, mint condition, you know, showroom condition, just the boat, no trolley, no trailer, I would say probably 3,500 would be realistic if it was in mint condition. So every bit of the mint that has been removed, we need to whittle that price down a bit. And I would guess something like 250 would be quite reasonable. It's a lot of boat for the money. But then we are talking about a boat which is 25 years old or getting on for that. So that is what I think on that one, Joseph. Thanks again for your super sticker. Hope that is a good answer. The answer that you are hoping for. I was hoping for a lot more, you might say. But anyway, you know, without seeing the boat, it's difficult to be accurate. All right, we've got on board Sail Imos at Navigar. Great to have you on board. Greetings from Benicassim, Spain. Bad pronunciation, probably, I should think. 10 months ago, I bought an old Hobie 16 from 1994. Very nice. It was a very good year. I needed to fix it up. I've learned a lot from your videos in the past few months. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that. That's really nice. It's always nice to know how much the videos are helping people, because if they weren't helping people, then what would be the point? Entertainment, that's what. Yeah, I'd keep doing it, I think. But anyway, thanks very much, and I hope it's going well for you with your 16. All right, Flightfest 900 says, does that screwdriver go on the cam or between it and the casing? So yeah, we'll see in the side of the cam, there's like one side with a cavity and the other side is plain. So the screwdriver, use like a flathead screwdriver with quite a wide head on it, and the screwdriver would want, how do I get this so that we can see it? The screwdriver would go in here, and we're levering it to get it to go up that way. So we're levering it against the side of the casting. Hold on, let's get that back in there. So we're levering it like that against the side of the casting. That is the easiest way to get a rudder cam to come back upright. If that doesn't work, you could also do it with pliers. But if you have to do this quite a lot, your cam is going to end up getting mangled quite quickly. Yeah, so not ideal. These days, I'm doing it with the main sheet, which is much nicer for the cam. I have made a video on it. Can't remember what it's called, but it said, I think on the thumbnail, it says The Solution, Rudder Cam, The Solution, something like that. All right, Ken says, by the way, love your channel. Thanks for all your videos. Thanks very much, Ken. I really appreciate that. We've got Jochen on board, channel member. Big channel members week here in Vasiliki at the moment, with many channel members visiting, let's say, where it all came from. Thanks for this pure gold of info. Yes, you know what you're talking about. This is pure gold. Ken says, I've had to use the screwdriver to get in there and push the white plunger down in the casting in order to reset my own cam. They can be sticky. I need to grease mine more often. Must be a thin screwdriver. Yeah, so what Ken is saying is he actually used, so in here underneath the cam would be a plunger like that, and he's actually using the screwdriver to push the plunger down to reset the cam. But I'm just using a screwdriver to lever the cam back into the original position. All right. So last one in the pre-loaded questions department. And we've been going over an hour now. So if anybody has got any more questions, yes, happy to answer them if you've already chucked in a super sticker, or if they come accompanied with a super sticker, because it is knocking on a bit here in Greece, and the super sticker will maintain the enthusiasm. Very good. All right, so we've got Paul, who sails a Dart 15 on the Isle of Wight in the UK, says he's got a head cam issue, maintaining a clear lens. Yes, this is like it's such an issue. So keeping the lens of your camera clean and salt free is difficult. The hotter it is, the worse the worse it gets, because what happens, not doing very well with getting things to show up today. Kind of there. Is the water goes on the lens, and before you know it, before the water can kind of drain off, the salt in the water has set on the lens, giving you that really 70s style kind of soft focus kind of thing, which doesn't really work for the videos. What is the solution? Paul says, I'm going to try out what surf photographers reckon, and that is applying wax to the lens. And smearing it and buffing it in. Perhaps that will retain a clear film of water longer. Yeah, if I got some of this stuff that I got here, maybe in here. Sorry, got all sorts of stuff, maybe not in here. Yeah, so I think I do use before I go out on a session, I use something like this to clean the lenses, make sure they're as clean as possible before I start. And I make sure when I am, before I'm sailing, I'm keeping the lenses of the cameras completely dry. So not letting them get splashed, not dunking them in the water. You know, occasionally, like especially if I've got the 360 camera on the long pole, that might go under the water. And then I'm like, oh, there's that one pretty much ruined. So I think it's a good idea to have, and I should listen to my own advice here, to have something that you keep dry, that maybe a tiny dry bag with a small cloth in. So mid-session, you could give your lens a good clean with the lens. The problem with, I was using stuff which, yes, shame I can't find it. It's in here somewhere. Which is kind of like, I think it's called Rain-X, but it was specifically made for action cameras. And the idea was that it got the water to bead off the lens much quicker. But when it's so hot, like I said, before the water can bead off, you've already got this salty residue. So what I end up doing is, especially on the helmet cam, is just thumbing the lens, trying to remember to thumb the lens. The one with that you said with the surfers, the surf photographers are using it. The reason I think that works well is because their camera is going under the water quite frequently. And like when it's really super windy and the camera's getting a load of spray in it, then happy days, because every time you get that spray, it cleans the lens again and the water doesn't have time to dry on there. And it's the drying of the water that, for me, that's what creates the problem. So what is the solution? I believe there is no solution apart from mid-session lens checks. Put the camera in a place where it's not going to get battered by spray. Like that is why the bridle cam is so good. Like bridle wires, camera here, lens facing the boat. Because the lens is pointing backwards, it means it's not going to get water in it. Oh, I've seen Kuhn is on board. Hi, Kuhn. Kuhn says Rain-X. That's the stuff. Yeah, but I tried Rain-X and for me it doesn't work. I think if you sail in fresh water on a lake, then you've got the massive upper hand with all of this, because in fresh water, if you get water on the lens, it's got no salt in it. Easy. Sailing in a salty water location is the problem. Yeah, so and using either the Office Hands Dave bracket, or I made this one with parts that I got from eBay. I sort of cut some down to make this triple bit so it goes onto the camera, and this works really well in the bridle wire position. What I like about this one is that it is indestructible once it is on. So when it's really windy, I do worry about, as well as actually sailing the boat, doing the talking and everything, I'm also a little bit concerned about the loss of a camera. And almost just as valuable as the camera is the SD card inside with the footage on it. There we go. All right. Ken just says if the lens is glass, Aquapel is a good product. I'll check that out. All right, last one, really the last one. This is from Laszlo, who says, thanks for all what you have done. Loves Joyrider TV. Keep it going. I'll do what I can. I'll do my best. I have at least 40 hours on the channel. Great stuff. As an absolute beginner, I've sailed my Grabner inflatable catamaran only twice. On my last outing, a sudden squall suddenly brought strong winds on a broad reach, downwind, roughly from about 7 o'clock on the clock face. The gusts struck the boat on the port quarter, burying the starboard hull deep. It's quite a story. I think it's nice to finish off with a story, isn't it? Ooh, I had eased the main sheet completely, and the main was folding flat over the forestay. Maybe Laszlo means the shroud there. I would have thought. The jib was eased about halfway, but still cleated. Against all odds, I managed to punch through and get back to shore, but I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. In hindsight, should I have furled the jib, or was the main pushing the bow down? Yeah, so furling the jib, if you've got a rolling jib and the conditions are starting to feel a bit punchy, you know, quite strong, and you're not sure if you can, you know, how you're going to manage it, then yes, getting rid of the jib is going to really, really help. But if what you're asking is at the moment when a gust hits you, should you pull the furling line on the jib? I would say no, it's too late by then, because your main power control on the boat is the main sheet. The main sheet's the majority of the sail area, and let's say 7 times out of 10, if you can release the main sheet enough, you won't capsize. So main sheet is number one, but if you're feeling that the wind is too strong generally and you've got a rolling jib, then yes, roll the jib. Yeah, I would roll the jib, definitely. But you can't roll the jib at that sort of moment. If you're sailing with a crew, perhaps the crew could roll the jib, but if you're sticking the nose of the boat down, it's a little bit too late. So all that you've got there to work with is the main sheet. So you did the right thing. Okay, so thank you very much for tuning in. That's all we've got time for today. Definitely going to have something for you on Sunday this week. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks for all the super stickers keeping the Q&A ad-free. There's still time for some more. Keeping the Q&A ad-free. But otherwise, thanks very much. If you're going sailing this weekend, get on the speed stick, and I'll see you soon with some more. Thank you.